It's official. President Trump has released over 10 executive actions related to immigration. I'm going to go through these executive actions one by one, break it down so you can understand how it will affect you or your loved ones. So listen up. I'm U.S. immigration attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I've been doing this for over a decade, helping immigrants to get their papers in the United States legally. I also share information that empowers immigrants through their immigration journey. President Trump released his America First priorities through the executive actions, and this summarized what his goals would be over the next 4 years. The one that specifically talks about immigration is the Make America Safe Again. Under these policies, he summarized a number of other types of executive actions that we're going to talk about later, some of which are border security priorities, sending the military to the border, suspension of the refugee settlement program, and re-implementation of the Remain in Mexico policy, a policy that was very controversial and which was terminated by the Biden administration. Now, I'm going to break down each executive action one by one. The executive action that has been raising a lot of concern is the executive order ending birthright citizenship. The name of the executive action is Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. The order states that U.S. citizenship would not automatically apply to any children who are born in the United States, but who are born to mothers who are not lawfully present or do not have lawful status here in the United States, and the father of the child is not a U.S. citizen. Also, it applies to those who are mothers who give birth to children here, but those mothers are here on temporary visas, like a visitor's visa, the H-1B visa, H-2B visas. So it's very concerning because it not only targets those who are undocumented, that alone in itself raises a lot of alarm. However, it also targets those who are lawfully present here in the United States. The executive action is going to take effect 30 days after it was signed, and it was signed on January 20th, 2025. So in February, after the February date, so after 30 days, any child who's born to a mother who is not lawfully present here, that means that they're undocumented, they either overstayed their visa or came into the country without permission, no longer have status, or a parent, a mother who has their visa, but the children do not have U.S. citizen or permanent resident fathers, will not be U.S. citizens. This executive action clearly contradicts the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which is the highest law of the land, and it certainly is superior to an executive action. 22 states have already sued the government on this new take on ending birthright citizenship. President Trump has argued that children who are born to undocumented immigrants or immigrants who are here on temporary visas are not subject to its jurisdiction of the United States under the Constitution. That's his argument. His argument is that because they came in temporarily and gave birth to children, they are not within the jurisdiction of the United States to be able to automatically be granted U.S. citizenship. Traditionally, the courts have upheld birthright citizenship and have sided with the plain language of the Constitution, stating that if you're born here, you are a U.S. citizen. This is set to take effect after February 19, 2025. It will certainly affect children who are born here because if they are not citizens of the United States and they're not citizens of other countries, then where do they belong? That would be the major question here, next to the constitutionality of this executive action. President Trump has, through this executive action, directed agencies not to issue citizenship documents such as passports or certificates of naturalization or certificates of citizenship to anybody who falls within this executive action who's prohibited from getting automatic citizenship. The pending litigation can lead to injunctions on that, meaning that the Department of State may have to continue issuing passports until the court can make a decision. Get your passports, get your social security numbers now to make sure you protect against any questions of citizenship or any possible complications along the way as a result of this executive action. I do want to create an update here in that the birthright citizenship executive order has been placed on hold by a federal judge in Seattle, Washington, who found the executive order to be blatantly unconstitutional, and that's verbatim. It's on hold until they can resolve the litigation. So for now, ending birthright citizenship will not be implemented as part of the law. President Trump has issued a suspension of entry at the southern border. The name of this executive action is called Guaranteeing the State's Protection from Invasion. Though the border has been quiet since President Biden implemented certain rules and restrictions before President Trump took office, President Trump is still insisting that there is an ongoing invasion at the southern border. Since he has characterized this as an invasion, he's able to invoke Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, which enables the federal government to use emergency powers to protect the states from an invasion. The action directs federal agencies to block the entry of migrants not only based on their criminal backgrounds, but also based on other factors, such as their health. It also allows the government to immediately repatriate or deport immigrants who are seeking entry into the United States without much due process and without regard for their need for asylum. There are questions about the constitutionality of this and whether the president can invoke such emergency powers based on an invasion by immigrants. It may not be intended for immigrants to be viewed as invaders, and this can be problematic. President Trump has issued an order on the security of the borders. It's called Securing Our Border Executive Order. The order directs the construction of barriers, aka the wall, deployment of additional personnel in order to secure the borders, termination of the catch and release policy that was in place previously. The catch and release policy allowed some immigrants who were not a danger, who did not have a criminal background or did not affect national security, to be able to be released pending their process, such as asylum or court proceeding. This executive action ends that. Instead, this executive order re-implements the Remain in Mexico policy. It also limits the parole program. For example, the CBP-1 app that enable asylum seekers to set appointments to seek asylum at the border has been terminated. It was terminated on January 20th. So there are going to be many people who are not going to be able to seek asylum in this orderly fashion. The reason Biden implemented the CBP-1 app to begin with was to try to discourage immigrants from crossing the border and facing dangers themselves. This is going to be gone. And now, because of that, many individuals will not get to seek the asylum that they were hoping to. This order also focuses on targeting human smuggling and trafficking. While I do support initiatives to secure our border here in the United States, I do not agree with the fact that it is going to come at the cost of those who are seeking humanitarian relief. Here's another controversial executive order, and this is requiring that the military go to the southern border in order to help with the enforcement of immigration law and securing the border. It's called Clarifying the Military's Role in Protecting the Territorial Integrity of the United States. In other words, it's the executive order on military prioritizing U.S. border security. By declaring a national emergency, President Trump has directed the Department of Defense to deploy the military to the southern border to prevent mass migration, as well as to help in the enforcement against human trafficking and smuggling. Of course, this raises serious concerns about using the military on U.S. soil. This can lead to an escalation in so many ways. The militarization of the border policy also means that there is an escalation of immigration enforcement, which could become dangerous when you are empowering the military and deploying the military to see immigrants as a threat. This escalation can also put a strain on our civil-military relations. Whenever we talk about involving the military in civil matters, there is always a concern that there could be a violation of civil liberties in times like this, where there is a declaration of a national security risk. Here's a new one. President Trump has designated cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. President Trump has requested that agencies provide solutions to approach the cartel problem. The executive order calls for the enhancement of certain law enforcement tools to be able to target these groups as terrorists. Of course, referring to cartels and gang organizations as quasi-governmental entities that are able to destabilize nations through their terrorist activities means that it could affect diplomatic relations with other countries like Mexico, because a part of the goal is to possibly use the military against gangs in Mexico, for example. And in doing so, the military, there has been talk about actually going into Mexico and doing a sort of invasion to be able to target these gangs. But that can cause a diplomatic crisis with Mexico. So the question here that I'm sure is going to arise and which will be challenged is this an overreach of the presidential powers here? President Trump has suspended the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program. That means that over the next 90 days, people who have been in unstable countries who are seeking refuge in the United States through the legal process and who do fall under the quota to be able to come in as a refugee will not be able to come. President Trump cited record migration levels and a strain on local and state resources because of the past migrations of immigrants into the country. Now, up until this point, we've talked about the various initiatives that will be taking place at the border using the military, re-implementing the Remain in Mexico policy, targeting cartels as terrorists. President Trump has been working on being able to make this possible by declaring a national emergency at the southern border. He has signed the Declaring a National Emergency at the southern border of the United States in order to make these initiatives targeting the cartels' Remain in Mexico policy, to rebuild the wall, to be able to use the military at the border, to be able to make all of that possible. One of the challenges of these executive orders and the initiatives behind them is the funding that it will require to be able to do all of this. Now, here's one that you definitely need to know about. They will be implementing more stringent visa vetting policies. and screening. This is called Protecting the United States from Foreign Terrorists and Other National Security and Public Safety Threats. The order mandates more stringent measures to check the backgrounds of every immigrant who's coming into the United States. That means that we're probably going to be seeing more denials and more delays in the immigration process and the visa process. This also means that we will be seeing an implementation of certain bans on countries where there are so-called national security threats or concerns. And then we may see an expansion of those country bans on countries where there's a high number of citizens who come into the country and overstay or who cross the border at that. Unfortunately, this means that we may be seeing bans on certain countries getting visas, for example, similar to the Muslim ban. And President Trump also signed an executive order rescinding over 100 prior executive orders issued by the Biden administration, some of which were immigration executive orders. One such order was the enforcement priorities that were issued, stating that only certain immigrants would be targeted for deportation, those with criminal records, those who recently crossed the border illegally, those who are a threat to national security and public safety. That is now gone because of this executive order. So that means that even though President Trump has said that they are only targeting immigrants who have criminal records or who have orders of removal, it enables them to broaden the scope of who they can target in their mass deportation operation. Other such policies that were rescinded with this would be family reunification programs and certain asylum processes. For now, these are the summaries of the executive actions. These executive orders enable President Trump and his administration to have unfettered power to be able to carry out mass deportations, as well as to carry out more stringent policies at the border. We are certainly going to feel the effects of this, and it is going to come at the cost of innocent, honest immigrants who are contributing to the United States. I will continue to keep you updated as more changes come in.